Hey there, I'm Meagan Hatcher-Mays, Director of Democracy Policy at Indivisible and the host of Impeachment Daily, the only daily impeachment recap program. The only one. Impeachment Daily exists to demystify the impeachment process and let you know how you can stay involved in this fight. Today, we are going to be talking about yesterday's absolutely bonkers hearing in the House Judiciary Committee, where Democrats laid out the case for Trump's impeachment and Republicans threw multiple temper tantrums and howled like children. Plus, we're going to talk about the big news of the day, which is that this morning, House Democrats announced which articles of impeachment they are going to be formally pursuing against Donald Trump. So let's get right into it with our first segment, which is called What Just Happened?, where we recap what we know. Yesterday, we witnessed a 10-hour-long marathon hearing in the House Judiciary Committee, which at times resembled an absolute clown show, thanks to Republican members of Congress who had absolutely no defense for Trump's impeachable conduct. So they spent most of the day just, yelling. But the Democrats put up two formidable witnesses to present their case. The first was Barry Burke, who works for the Judiciary Committee, and the second was Dan Goldman, a former federal prosecutor who you may remember from the public hearings held in the House Intelligence Committee. So these guys were invited to present the Democrats' case for impeachment in front of the Judiciary Committee because that committee is in the process of actually drafting the articles of impeachment against Trump. More on that later. The Democrats, as you know, have a very compelling case, by the way. Trump is a prolific criminal, and he's very open with the press about his corrupt activities, just regularly admitting to trying to bribe Ukraine, regularly surrounding himself with goons like Rudy Giuliani, who, by the way, spent last week in Ukraine trying to get investigations going into the Bidens. In other words, Giuliani was in Ukraine doing the thing that Trump is currently in trouble for doing. Great lawyering, Rudy. Anyway, Barry Burke kicked things off yesterday saying the scheme by President Trump was so brazen, so clear, supported by documents, actions, sworn testimony, uncontradicted contemporaneous records, that it's hard to imagine that anybody could dispute those acts, let alone argue that that conduct does not constitute an impeachable offense or offenses. Pretty clear who he's talking to there. And Dan Goldman could not have been more plain in his testimony that Trump is an immediate threat to the stability of our democracy. He said President Trump's persistent and continuing effort to coerce a foreign country to help him cheat to win an election is a clear and present danger to our free and fair elections and to our national security. Clear and Present Danger, of course, a very good movie starring Harrison Ford, but a very bad reality starring Donald Trump. Anyway, Dan Goldman also shared all the details that the Intelligence Committee has established regarding Trump's Ukraine scheme and did a very good job, I think, at rebutting the Republicans' pretty thin defense of Trump. Now, remember, Republicans have been complaining about a lot of things, but they've kind of narrowed it down to two. One is that we haven't heard from the whistleblower, who is the person who initially tipped off Congress that Trump was trying to pressure Ukraine for a political favor. And two, it's really no big deal, no harm, no foul, because Trump ultimately released the aid money to Ukraine. Well, all of that is nonsense. You know this because you're an avid viewer of Impeachment Daily. But Dan Goldman tore those arguments up again yesterday, pointing out that, one, the whistleblower report is not the basis of the case against Donald Trump. Everything that was in the original whistleblower report has since been independently verified by what? Like a dozen witnesses under oath. And two, yes, the United States finally released the aid to Ukraine, but Trump still solicited the favor. The second Trump said, "I'd like you to do us a favor," though, that was the abuse of power. Like, that's the impeachable conduct. Plus, Trump's administration only released the aid money to Ukraine after it was clear they had gotten caught. That's not proof of innocence. That's proof of a cover-up. So Goldman went on to testify that Trump's activities in Ukraine were a months-long scheme to solicit foreign help in his 2020 re-election campaign, withholding official acts from the government of Ukraine in order to coerce and secure political interference in our domestic affairs. And of course, we know that Trump pursued this scheme with his personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and that he roped in nearly everyone in his administration to help. Remember, Gordon Sondland, the ambassador to the European Union, somebody who was very deeply involved in all of this, testified that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo knew about Trump and Giuliani's scheme. He knew Rudy Giuliani was involved in all of this. And when Gordon Sondland told Mike Pence about this, that this was all going on, Mike Pence didn't seem all too surprised or shocked to hear about it. So how did the Republicans respond to all of this? By wailing, just screaming, by throwing tantrums and humiliating themselves for Trump's benefit. They have no defense. There's nothing to defend. Trump is the most corrupt president in United States history. So all Republicans can do right now is try and distract all of us from Trump's criminality by jumping out of their clown cars and tripping over their giant shoes. For example, remember we talked about this before, it turns out that Representative Devin Nunes, who is the ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee, he is somebody who took a leading role in the GOP in the impeachment proceedings when the Intelligence Committee was holding their own public hearings about a week or so ago. Oh, well, it turns out that guy, Devin Nunes, is himself implicated in this Ukraine scheme. We know that Nunes was setting up meetings with former officials in Ukraine, corrupt former officials in Ukraine, also to get dirt on the Bidens. And we know, based on Dan Goldman's testimony, that Nunes was in contact with Giuliani and others who were involved in this scheme because they got access to the phone records that shows that this was going on. So let's be clear, a top Republican has now been implicated in a conspiracy, for lack of a better word, with the President of the United States and the President's henchmen. If one of my colleagues were named in such a scheme, I'd be disappointed, to say the least. But Devin Nunes' colleagues in the House, like Doug Collins of Georgia, seemed more upset that Dan Goldman caught him. Doug Collins called it a gratuitous drive-by. So I'll say that again. Doug Collins was upset yesterday, not at Devin Nunes for being corrupt as hell, but at Dan Goldman for figuring out that Devin Nunes is corrupt as hell. Truly, the real crime here, I think we can all agree, according to Doug Collins, is pointing out which Republicans in Congress are criminals. So that's what just happened. It was a lot. But here is what is happening, which is that House Democrats announced just this morning that they are drafting 2 articles of impeachment against Donald Trump, charging him with 1, abuse of power, and 2, obstruction of Congress. Listen, the case against Donald Trump for both of these charges is, of course, overwhelming. He obviously abused his power as president when he tried to pressure Ukraine into doing a political favor for him. That would be digging up dirt on the Bidens in exchange for about $400 million in foreign aid money. There is a mountain of evidence like text messages, transcripts, and testimony from direct witnesses that proves that Trump did this. Just because Trump got caught and eventually released the aid money doesn't mean he's innocent. He still tried to convince Ukraine to interfere in our 2020 elections, and that is an abuse of power, and that is impeachable. The obstruction of Congress charge is pretty straightforward too. Look, after Trump got caught, he tried to cover up his corruption by refusing to comply with the impeachment investigation. Trump refused to turn over critical pieces of evidence, and he demanded that White House aides defy lawful subpoenas and refuse to testify in front of the committees who were conducting the impeachment investigation in Congress. Look, Congress has the constitutional authority to investigate the executive branch. That's the president. If the president refuses to participate in a lawful congressional investigation, that's called obstruction of Congress, and it's an impeachable offense. Here's a fun fact for you. Obstruction of Congress was going to be one of the articles of impeachment that Congress drafted against Richard Nixon back in the 1970s. But Nixon, of course, ultimately resigned before he was removed from office. That is not company I would like to keep. But shout out to you, Donald. You did it. You want to know the worst part about all of this, though? Conservative groups are running millions of dollars in ads to support Trump and protect him from being impeached. That means that there are members of Congress out there who are hearing more from the anti-impeachment crowd than they are hearing from people who support impeaching Donald Trump because they love our democracy. That means we need to step up our game. We are being outspent by these shadowy conservative groups. So we need to keep calling our members of Congress, even if you know they already support impeachment. You should give them a call and thank them for standing up for our democracy, and let them know you have their back, and to keep up the courage and vote yes to impeach Donald Trump. You can text IMPEACH to 97779. It will connect you directly with your member of Congress. If you have a Republican member of Congress or a member of Congress who does not support impeachment, continue to call them as well. All we're doing here is fighting for the very soul of our democracy, so invite them to the fight. Again, you can text IMPEACH to 97779 and we'll connect you directly. Of course, we are still planning our big mass mobilization event for the night before the final vote on impeachment in the House of Representatives. Impeachment Eve, if you will, not as festive as other holidays, but still pretty good. You can go to impeach.org and pre-register your event or RSVP for an event that's already on the map. We have events in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. Great work. We still don't know the exact date of the vote as of yet, but we think it'll happen sometime the week of this December 16th, which means it's coming up really soon. So go to impeach.org and pre-register your event. We need to hit the streets en masse. The senators who are going to be taking the impeachment articles and holding an impeachment trial on these charges are going to be looking to see if there's energy in support of removing the president from office. We need to bring that energy. Go to impeach.org and sign up for your event. Hit the streets with me. Let's go. Let's show the Senate that there is energy out there for removing the most corrupt president in United States history. Yeah, I think it's out there. So go to impeach.org, text IMPEACH to 97779. Thank you for tuning in to Impeachment Daily, and I'll see you very soon.